The Dallas Mavericks currently hold a record of 37-28, which is closely reminiscent of last season's record before things took a nosedive. Though this year, things are looking a lot different. Forget about last season's iffy roster and the fact they currently sit at number 8 in the West. This is the best roster they've had in years, and they are ready to take on anyone come playoffs time. Luka and Kyrie shared the floor together last season for exactly 900 possessions. In those 900 possessions together, they were plus 4.6 per 100 possessions, scoring 121.7 points with a 60.2% field goal rate. They were also 80th percentile in net rating, 94th in points, 99th in effective field goal percentage, and 91st in turnover percentage. To put it in perspective, a 4.6 net rating would have ranked 4th in the league last season. All this in just 20 games playing together. So what makes them so effective? Well, for starters, you have two of the most versatile and unguardable players on the league. There are so many combinations they can throw your way. They are individually insane isolation players, and they can get a basket from virtually anywhere. Last year, the Mavericks were looking at increasing their pace. Having Kyrie on board gives Luka the nudge he needs to pick up the tempo. Doncic does love calling the shots, and having a partner to zip the ball to changes their game and tempo. Kyrie is the perfect partner for that. Kyrie is a dynamic off-ball scorer as a great spot-up shooter or as a fast break option. On the other hand, you have Luka, who dominates the pick and roll in any open lane the defense might give him. With these two types of players on the opposite side, how do you choose who to defend? If for some reason you are able to defend these two, on the side you have a guy that is averaging 16 points per game on a 52 effective field goal percentage in Tim Hardaway Jr., who as of now is also in the race for 6th Man of the Year. All of this on a very limited sample time. Most of the Mavericks roster was absolutely cooked post Irving trade. Other than Tim Hardaway Jr., pretty much no other Mavericks player down the stretch presented themselves as a threat in games, considering Mavericks have a combined 85 games missed by starters and heavy rotation players, including 22 games missed by Kyrie, 8 games by Luka, 18 by Lively, and 37 by Kleba. This continuous absence of main guys allows defenses to focus their full attention on Luka or Kyrie. It's no secret that losing Jalen Brunson last year to the Knicks left a big hole in the lineup. I mean, his numbers speak for themselves, so we don't have to go into a lot of detail there. Now, with that loss, the Mavs found themselves in a very tight position and had to look for options, and quick. So why not gamble on an 8-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, NBA champion? Controversial to say the least, this trade had the whole basketball world fumbling. Why would you pair up two ball-hungry point guards? In what world would this work? Clearly, Dallas saw something nobody else saw. Between injuries, defensive distress, and hurried chemistry building, the results fell short last season. They barely had time to catch their breath, let alone build chemistry. Together, they carried a 8-12 record last season, so it's safe to say it didn't go according to plan. And yet, optimism was kept high in the Dallas locker room. With a beefed-up roster, hopes were high, and last season's defensive and rebounding weaknesses were starting to look like it won't haunt them anymore, even more so with their recent additions. Last year's performance was so bad, it got the Mavericks fined. Nah, I'm just kidding. They did get fined though, but for tanking. Now, it turns out that this was actually the right move because they didn't make the playoffs. They were able to keep a pick that allowed them to get Derek Lively on draft night. Now, this alone has been a game changer for the Mavs. He has been an insane addition to this team. He adds a presence down in the paint as a very active young player, which complements perfectly the game styles of Luka and Kyrie. He provides a spacing that is incredibly beneficial to the Mavs, a great pick and roll option for either Luka or Kyrie, and he's great as a rim protector also. More recently, the moves made before the trade deadline tells you Dallas means business. The Mavericks basically gave up the first-round picks they had to trade for Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington. Sure, you might be thinking they're going crazy, right? But this might be exactly what was missing from the equation. Before the deadline, they were number 12 in offensive rating and number 22 in defensive rating. After the trade deadline, they were now number 8 in offense and number 4 in defense. This is a huge jump, especially in defense, which is what they needed more help with. Currently, they have a defensive rating at 102.5, limiting opponents to a 41% shooting and averaging 6 blocks. Since landing in Dallas, Daniel Gafford has been in great form, averaging 9.3 points, 7.1 rebounds, and 1.2 blocks in just over 16 minutes per game. And now those averages have been going up since Gafford has had to step up with lively sideline, putting up points in the double-digit range. This is a guy with a 7'2" wingspan who is currently shooting 68 field goal percentage. Not bad for your backup center. The Mavs are loving Gafford's impact, especially on the offensive glass. With him in the mix, they're not feeling the absence of Lively as much. This ultimately gives the Mavs much needed depth and great rotational options once Lively is back. The trades for PJ Washington is also a big change. In PJ, they have a player that can defend the best guy on the opposite team. These two add a layer of versatility into the team that almost no team has. They can now play small if they want, with players like Kleber that can play center, or they can play big with Lively and Gafford. These two have really injected some serious championship aspiration into this team. They have filled some much needed gaps, especially on the defensive side. Other players that create great depth for the Mavs are Josh Green, Derrick Jones Jr., and Dante Exum, who is one of the greatest comeback stories in the NBA. Josh Green has developed side by side to Luka, shooting 49 field goal percentage and playing great perimeter defense. He's a great wing player that contributes on both sides of the court. Derrick Jones Jr. is another great perimeter defender with a 7-foot wingspan, which he's using very well to his advantage. A great example of how all these details come together is their recent win against the Suns on the 22nd of February 2024. This was a statement. Luka and Kyrie led the charge in a game that felt like a playoff showdown, and it so happened to be their 7th straight win on that stretch, tying records set back in their championship winning season of 2010 to 2011. In all honesty, I think Luka's been overlooked in the MVP talks for a bit. But that's changing fast. He's currently 3rd in the race and putting up the insane averages of 34.6 points, 9 rebounds, and 9.8 assists. Apart from the ridiculous offensive statistics, one aspect that can't be overlooked is the massive improvement Luka has made on the defensive side. This year has been the best defensive performance of his career. He is currently the 10th best isolation defender and the 2nd best post defender in the league. On top of this, he's 7th in the league in steals per game. Now, taking all these details into consideration and how everything has been developing in the league so far, what do you think is the ceiling for these new look Mavs? If you ask me, their ceiling could be right above that championship trophy. As always, see you next time and keep balling.